Circumstances were favourable to the object, for Sir Matthew was in one of those towering fits of passion to which his family and dependents knew him to be subject, though the majority of the world declared him to be an extremely good-natured man. "Blackguard! Vermin! Devil's imp!" were among the first intelligible words which reached the heiress after she had seated herself, and these were accompanied by cuffs so heavy on the head and shoulders of Mchl that it required a very powerful effort over herself to prevent her darting forward to seize the arm that gave them. But this prudent effort was dictated and sustained by a stronger feeling than curiosity, and she remained perfectly still to await what should follow. Dr. Crockley, who, though not among the corps of performers, had been permitted to be useful behind the scenes in a variety of ways, and among the rest had acted as prompter, stood beside the trembling child, and it was to his friendly ear that the irritated Sir Matthew addressed himself. "Will you believe he did not do it on purpose? Will you believe, Crockley, that there was anything to make him cry then? Had we not borne with all his beastly stupidity expressly for the purpose of keeping this little ungrateful monster in good humour? Hadn't I fed him and crammed him, as you bid me, with what was too good for him ever to have reached the smell of? Didn't I cosset his lazy beast of a mother with such niceties as the dirty beggar never heard of before? And his crook-shanked rat of a brother, too. Haven't they all been fed at my cost for more than a month past? And then to see this black-hearted traitor come upon the stage and cry before all the company as if his heart was breaking." "It's too bad to bear," replied Dr. Crockley, "and if he was to be flayed alive and salted, it would not be half what he deserved." "Wouldn't the best thing I could do be to send him back into the factory tomorrow morning, Doctor?" demanded Sir Matthew, suddenly quitting his hold of the child and setting his square arms akimbo. "By the living God, I am sick of the job." "It will be very good, sir, if you will," said the boy, "and I won't go to sleep at work at all, but no more won't Edward neither, but if you will but please let me go back again." "See how much he dreads the factory," said Sir Matthew with a grim smile. "But," nodding his head and winking his eye familiarly to the child, "we shall see, my pretty dear. If Mr. Parsons can't contrive to do something more than just keep you awake, he shall go back, Crockley. Upon my soul he shall. It is the only way to prevent his driving me mad. I loathe the very sight of him." "You must do as you like, Sir Matthew," replied his confidential friend, "but it will be the most damnedish foolish thing you ever contrived in your life. If you do, I tell you the story is doing wonders everywhere, and now, because of a stupid brat can't say his lesson perfect, you are going to spoil it all." "His lesson perfect? Confound the sly vagabond! That was not the point, Crockley. It was not the lesson that choked him. How much more will you bet me that if I get 50 lines written down abusing me and nothing else in 'em, he won't learn them off as glib and perfect as any actor on the stage? I know his black heart, and he shall find out that mine is not made of pap before I have done with him." "That's all right and fair enough, and I have nothing to say against it," replied the friendly physician. "Let us talk it over quietly together tomorrow morning. But for tonight—" And here Dr. Crockley, taking his friend by the arm, led him to the door which opened upon the stage, from whence issued a tinamere of instruments, sufficient to cover what he might wish to say, not only from the ear of little Mchl, but from all the others. The moment selected by the angry knight for relieving himself of the wrath which had burned within him would have been a most favourable one, but for the accidental vicinity of Mrs. Brotherton. While the whole corps of performers, excepting the manufacturer and the factory boy, were grouped upon the stage in a style the most favourable for the display of their persons and dresses, the trio above mentioned, augmented, by way of finale, by tambourines and triangles, went steadily on in a crescendo movement that ended in a clamour rendered perfect by the last peal of applause from the well-nigh worn-out audience, so that their secret conference was not otherwise likely to be overheard. At the moment after Sir Matthew had declared his intentions of teaching Mchl to know what his heart was made of, and just as he was himself led off by his friend Crockley, Miss Brotherton pressed her 2 hands strongly upon her breast, involuntarily pronounced the word "Monster!" and then, placing her hands before her eyes, remained lost in no very pleasing reverie. But hardly had her meditations lasted a moment, ere they were chased by hearing the sound of someone falling near her, and looking round she perceived poor Martha stretched insensible upon the floor. Inexpressibly shocked at remembering, which she did by no slow action of the mind, the suffering to which her own unscrupulous curiosity had exposed the unfortunate girl, she ran to her with eager haste, and with much repentant tenderness raised her head, and did all her small experience suggest towards restoring her. The comfortable insensibility did not last long, and Martha, who with restored animation immediately recovered her recollection, and whose composition no affectation of any kind had part, raised herself without assistance from the ground, and silently placed herself upon a sofa. "Dear, excellent Martha," exclaimed Miss Brotherington, with much true feeling, "fear not that I should ever repeat what I have so accidentally heard, and let not your good and dutiful nature suffer thus because I have heard it. We have all our faults, Martha, and it is the duty of each to pray for the conversion of their own hearts first, and then for the repentance of others. And what prayers, dear girl, so likely to be heard as those of a good and dutiful child? Let us slip back to our places, Martha. This clapping of hands announces, as I take it, the conclusion of the piece." Martha, though wounded to the very soul, uttered no word of depreciation or complaint, but there was an unsophisticated simplicity of character about her which made her decline, by a courtesy that had little of the stiffness of ceremony in it, the offered arm of Mary, and stepping forward, she opened the door by which they had left the theatre, till the heiress passed through it and resumed her place.